Welcome to a condensed but jam-packed edition of HQ Spotlight and CBS Sports Network. I'm Haley Sutton. We're kicking things off from Las Vegas, where the Big Ten has taken over for media days ahead of the 2025 season. You know, yesterday was all about the defending champs and their quest for a repeat. Today, we're asking big questions of the teams hoping to compete with Ohio State. Oregon was long thought of as a national championship favorite for much of the 2024 season. They have a little quarterback competition going on as they try to rise back to the top in their second year of Big Ten play. You also have Minnesota, who lost both coordinators in the offseason. How will they respond? And can Northwestern's offense finally step up to the plate? We are asking big questions of the Wildcats. And to do so, we've got our football crew of Josh Pate alongside our Super Bowl champ, Bryant McFadden, here to answer those questions surrounding our Big Ten teams taking the podium today. Fellas, we start with the Ducks, who went 13-1 last year, but of course that one loss proved fatal when they got blown out by Ohio State in the college football playoff. So Josh, if you're Dan Lanning and you hope to get this team back to the top of the mountain, what questions are you asking of this team?
Well, I'm asking about my team's ability to finish, but that's sort of arbitrary down the road a little ways. When we're talking about personnel, B-Mac, they had to go hit the portal hard for offensive linemen. Now, you and I spoke yesterday, and I'll reiterate it at least one time today. Oregon is one of the handful of programs that we just have learned to give benefit of the doubt to. So they go make a move, and whether you've heard of the names they get, most of the time you have. But even if you haven't heard of the names, you just say, well, Lanning's taking them. Lanning's trusting them. Like, they must be pretty good. But I look at a lot of the contenders. Oregon happens to be the one we're talking about right now, and how different the roster depth situation is right now for contenders. This has got to work. Like the offensive linemen, 3 of the 5 starters I think they're going to roll out there are from the portal. It's got to work. Everyone's going to talk about Dante Moore here today. I'm focused on who's playing in front of him, who's protecting him, who's giving him time to hopefully make all the throws we're accustomed to Oregon making.
And you talked about the offensive side. I'm attacking the offensive side also with my biggest question with the Oregon Ducks. Will Stein continue his quarterback magic that we've seen over the last few seasons with Oregon? You talk about Dan Lanning, he's been receiving so much praise, deserving so. But a lot of praise should be also pointed to Will Stein. When you look at what he's done since becoming the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach, we've seen nothing but high-level play coming from that said position. Remember years ago with Bo Nix, right? Look at what Bo Nix did under Will Stein. Completed almost 80% of his passes. Outstanding numbers that led him to be a high first-round draft pick in the NFL. A year ago, Dylan Gabriel was already a made man in college football. But what he did with Will Stein, he kind of fine-tuned his skills that led to an outstanding year, once again, for the team, and as an individual led to him being drafted in the 3rd round by the Cleveland Browns. Now in comes a new quarterback to the university, Dante Moore. He's been around for some time, of course, formerly with UCLA, but we have yet to see the consistency that we thought we would see with Dante at UCLA. Can Will Stein continue his quarterback magic? Because of what he's done with the previous 2 quarterbacks has been phenomenal. That led to really good years for Oregon. If they have any opportunity to reach those aspirations, they have to get great play from the quarterback position, and it starts and it stops with the coaching of Will Stein.
You know, also to just follow on something that happened in recruiting season. They signed a 5-star quarterback. He's on campus for like 5 minutes, comes in there during bowl prep, sees Dante Moore. He hit the exit door, and I think a lot of what led to him hitting the exit door, Haley, was putting his eyeballs on Dante Moore and realizing there's probably not immediate playing time here for me. Yeah.
It's interesting, too, when you talk about Dante Moore, Josh, because with or without that 5-star signing, Dante Moore is set to become the 3rd different starting quarterback in the last 3 years for Dan Lanning out at Oregon. So the quarterback coach, all of the things trying to come together there when it comes to the quarterback. Going to be some big questions there as they open the season against Montana State August 30th. Let's talk about Minnesota next, gentlemen. They capped off their 8-5 season with a big win over Virginia Tech in one of the best bowl games out there, the Duke Mayo Bowl. By the way, they're now 6-0 in postseason games under PJ Fleck. But BMAC kind of feels like this team needs to take another step forward when it comes to the Big Ten. They were just 5-4 last year. So what questions are you asking of Minnesota as this team tries to do that and take that next step in the conference?
Well, Haley, for me, I'm targeting the offensive side of the football field. When you look at having a new quarterback, it's imperative to have playmakers surrounding that said quarterback. So who is going to emerge at the wide receiver spots for Minnesota? They lost their top 2 pass catchers from a year ago. The returning pass catcher in terms of receiving yards is Darius Taylor. He had 350 yards. he plays the running back position. Anytime your returning pass catcher is a running back, that's not a good situation. So number one, trying to determine who's going to emerge to be a wide receiver, a consistent guy, not to mention having the depth behind those said players as well. They're going to have to rely on some transfers. So that's okay. That's the new landscape in college football. But the consistency needs to be there, because you look at what they've done in years past, we know they're going to win ball games. We know they're going to compete. But they're trying to get to the next step. It's about having skillful playmakers surrounding whoever the quarterback will be for Minnesota to be able to have the best coming from that said quarterback when he gets the football into his playmaker hands.
Look, PJ Fleck's not in our room right now, so we can just talk freely and openly. I don't know that there is a next step for them to take. Everyone just assumes that when you're somewhere, it's logical that you want to take the next, rung up the ladder, and sometimes that happens. How do I know that Minnesota's capable of that? And also, there have been some really interesting coordinator moves here the last few cycles. They lost Joe Rossi, they lost Kurt Shiraka, and now Corey Heatherman goes to Miami. And maybe for a premier program, you're used to losing coordinators to go be head coaches. That's not what's been happening here. And also, I don't know if I just blindly trust Minnesota, as good as PJ's been at backfilling at the coordinator position. I don't just blindly trust that you can continue to hit and hit and hit there. And you're replacing some defensive stars. So for everyone who asks, can you take the next step? I'll counter with, what if this was the apex? We see it all the time in college football.
Yes, we do.
You go back and look 3 years ago, and I didn't know it at the time, but that was as good as that program was going to get. Well, maybe it's not a positive statement, I know, but maybe that's where Minnesota is. They've been a really, really hard-nosed, tough program last few years.
And I'll say this to your point, Josh. That was very, very informative. But when you look at the fan base for Minnesota, if there is no next step, I think they're okay with it, because the saving grace has been postseason success. That has been the saving grace for Minnesota. He's been very, very well in winning bowl games, whatever bowl game it is, the Mayo Bowl, it doesn't matter. They've competed, and that has been a saving grace for them, because when you look at the landscape of the Big Ten, they're in that middle of the pack in terms of tiers. And if you're in the middle of the pack, if you're a Minnesota fan, you're okay with that, because the alternative could be worse.
Yeah.
You could be a bottom tier level team where you don't have any aspirations of just seeing any competitive football. So to your point, if there is no next step, I don't think they're going to ring the alarms, because when you look at what PJ has done, he's done a pretty good job considering everything that has been surrounding him.
Yeah, just to hammer down on the postseason success as well, B-Mac, they've won 8 consecutive bowl games. 6 of those have come under PJ Fleck. And then when you look at some of the losses last year, 4 of Minnesota's 5 losses were by 7 points or less. So maybe the next step here is getting past that, right? Not letting close games slip away like we saw last year. Only time will tell as they open up their season against Buffalo later this August. Let's pivot and talk about Northwestern, gentlemen. And Josh, I'm looking at our rundown here that we've got going on for the show, and I noticed that B-Mac gave us his big question for Northwestern, but your line is still blank. So I'll leave it up to you two here. B-Mac, you can either go first and share what you're asking about Northwestern this year, or Josh, you can let us know what you're thinking when it comes to the Wildcats, who, by the way, had just 2 wins in the Big Ten last year.
So they told me that I got one phone a friend.
Yeah.
My friend is Tom Fornelli in this case. He is my Northwestern authority. And I had to wait for him to get in the room this morning. And so I said, Fornelli, what are we going with on Northwestern? He said, transfers, 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 transfers. So that's my question, B-Mac.
Yeah.
Excuse me, that is our question. Tom and I want to know, transfers. Are the transfers, and what is the real Northwestern? Is it 8-4? Is it 4-8? We're going into year 3 under a staff change here. So transfers, Haley, I'm told, is my big, big point of emphasis.
And you talked about, 2023, I think that was David's first year, David Brom's first year with Minnesota. He was the talk of the conference because they won 8 games. So the expectations were pretty marginal considering the first season success.
Coach of the year.
Coach of the year in the Big Ten. And then they flatlined tremendously in 2024. And the reason why is because of how horrendous the offense was. And that's my burning question for Northwestern. I have some numbers for you guys just to back my question in terms of how ugly and horrible their offense was. 17 points, you see it there. Second fewest in the Big Ten, 128th, there you have it, in FBS. When you look at only 7 passing touchdowns in 2024, tied for 3rd worst in FBS. They completed 39% of red zone opportunities, tied for 3rd worst in FBS. They had 18 turnovers in 24, at the bottom half of the Big Ten compared to only 9 turnovers in 2023. So you talk about what transpired between 2023 and 2024, there you have it. Their offense was an automobile with no transmission. If you know anything about automobiles, you can have a good engine, but if you have no transmission, you can pat the gas, you ain't going nowhere.
It is certainly.
They were patting the gas and not going anywhere. Northwestern in 2024. Can they get the transmission right?
So the gas patter offense, 2025.
No question.
Got to have a good transmission.
All right.
Good transmission.
So still some questions for Northwestern. By the way, guys, just for you, David Braun just finished his 2nd season at Northwestern. So, BMAC, you were right on there, and he did win Coach of the Year in 2023 after winning the Las Vegas Bowl in 23. So we will continue to ask questions of Northwestern. Fellas, sit tight. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side as Big Ten Media Days continue out in Las Vegas. The Nittany Lions kicking off our college football campaign on CBS with a renewed sense of urgency to bring home a title. Is this the year Penn State does it? We'll ask our experts next. Welcome back to HQ Spotlight. 2 teams stand atop the Big Ten preseason standings ahead of the 2025 season. One is the reigning national champions, and the other, the team many experts expect to win it all this year. Of course, the expectations for Penn State always sky high, even at media days out in Las Vegas. But this year, that pressure somehow feels a little bit bigger as James Franklin still looks for that national title. There's a lot of questions to ask about the Nittany Lions, and so we're back on HQ Spotlight with our crew in Vegas, Josh Pate and Bryant McFadden, getting us ready for the Big Ten season on CBS. BMAC, I want to talk to you about Penn State. I was listening to your conversation with Danny Cannell earlier on HQ when you were talking about Drew Aller and why he can be the quarterback, the chosen one, if you will, out at Penn State. You said as a cornerback, you don't like playing against a quarterback like Drew Aller if he's playing at his highest potential, but that's kind of the question when it comes to Penn State for you, right? Is that if Drew Aller can take that next step?
Yes, can he live up to the billing? He's one of the more prolific quarterbacks in college football, clearly the best quarterback in the Big Ten, future first-round type of talent. But I need to see him live up to the billing. And the issue with that is when you look at Penn State's overall talent, right? I think they have the most experience. They're the most talented team in the Big Ten. But their championship aspirations starts with Drew Aller. And can he live up to the billing against high-level play? A year ago, against top-5 opponents, they were 0-3. But also in those 0-3 outings, Drew Aller only completed around 50% of his passes. He threw 4 interceptions and 3 touchdowns. That's not winning football. So when you look at their schedule, you get Oregon early in the year at home. You get Ohio State in November. If you're Drew Aller, number one, the quarterback matchup is in favor of you, regardless who Oregon trots out on the football field. The same could be said for Ohio State at the quarterback position. Number two, you got a ball. You got a ball because in those said matchups, he did not reach the level that we know he could reach. So right now, that's my question. It's about Drew Aller. You have everything else. You got talent everywhere. You got running backs. You got everything. It's about the 5-star quarterback living up to the billing and performing like a 5-star in 5-star matchups.
He's a really likable kid, so I hope everything you're saying is right. If I were to go glass half empty, if we were on a debate stage, I would say if that kid was a 3-star coming out of high school, everything else was the same, would you be expecting him to level up this year? Because I think a lot of people would look at him in that case and say, yeah, that's been a 4-star even. That's been about a 4-star effort. It's because of the high school billing, which I agreed with at the time, so I'm not knocking it in retrospect, that everyone expects a level up. But I'll say the same thing about this player that I said about Minnesota. How do you know that's not just who he is? So my question is the guys he's throwing the ball to, they really made a conscious effort in the portal to go attack as much as they could, because that's been, you know, the one glaring area where when you look at Penn State, they didn't have difference makers at, and that's the wide receiver position. And because of that, defenses haven't had to respect their ability to throw the ball. No one said to themselves, Penn State's going to beat us throwing the ball if we're not careful this Saturday. They may beat you running the ball 58 times, but not throwing the ball. Can they do that? If they're in pressure leverage situations in fourth quarters at home against Oregon, it's 24-23, you trail, you need a drive. Can you make a couple of throws? Do you have the guys who can win 50-50 matchups? That would be the difference. We're talking about fractions of inches here of the difference between them being able to get it done in big games and get over the hump versus what they have been. What they have been is very good. I think a more dynamic presence in the wide receiver room could push him over that hump.
And you know what, to piggyback on that point, when I look at some of the high-level quarterbacks that we've seen in years past, they've made the wide receivers look better. That's what great quarterbacks do, especially on the collegiate level. When you're a guy at the quarterback position, whoever's around you, you make them look better. And it happens at the highest level as well in the National Football League. So if we're visualizing Drew Aller as that type of quarterback, future first rounder coming up, it's his job, to your point, those transfers, yes, we know they can ball, but it's his job to make sure they look better than what they've actually displayed throughout their collegiate career, because you're supposed to be him at that said position. And we're gonna see, you know, if you look at the beginning of the schedule, if they want to go ahead and pat the gas and kind of fine-tune their skill set, they got games to do so before they get to Oregon early in the first half of the season.
Yeah, they're going to kick off our CBS coverage against Nevada on August 30th, so we're excited to see that one. I will mention that Penn State has about 4 wide receivers and a tight end that they added this offseason, whether it's transfer portal, high school recruiting, whatever it is. The big departure, I think, is Tyler Warren. A lot of people are forgetting how impactful he was for Drew Aller last year, so we'll see if he can make those adjustments. Let's talk about Washington next, fellas. They finished their first season under Jedd Fisch with a losing record. That was the first time that's happened since Jimmy Lake's final season back in 2021. However, they replaced both coordinators. They've got 8 players returning, 5 on offense, and maybe some new offense here. Josh, what are you looking at? What's the biggest question you have for the Huskies?
There's a lot of reason to be optimistic here. So I believe in them. I believe in the year 2 bump. I believe in all the stuff on the periphery, the bumper sticker stuff, the fortune cookie stuff. That all sounds good. Well, why does it happen? To me, if it happens with Washington, it'll be because people have slept on their quarterback, and he'll be good, and I'm really high on him. But the ability to run the ball, I think, will uptick. The ability to stop the run, I think, will uptick. And that's really what bit them. And if you don't possess that, that's just the kind of team that shows up and they win 38-16 one Saturday and then get beat 38-16 the next Saturday, because the inability to do that consistently makes things so wildly inconsistent. So if they can do those things, you're seeing the new coordinators there, if they can do those things, I feel really good that the other tumblers will fall into place.
And for me, the bigger question mark for me with Washington, number one, Jedd Fisch, I really love his style of coaching. I think he's a very, very intriguing coach, but very, very good at what he does. But will the 2024 road woes continue? That's what led to them having a below 500, not a winning record a year ago, was the road woes. They were 0-5 on the road, tied for the worst in this century for Washington at that state university. They were horrible. So you look at the road games this season: at Washington State on CBS, at Maryland, at Michigan, at Wisconsin, at UCLA. Outside of at Michigan, you would think they could have a better outcome than what they did not display a year ago. They were 0-5 on the road. It was the Jekyll and Hyde syndrome with Washington. When you watch them at home, you saw inspired play. Remember, they beat Michigan at home. They have won 20 straight at home. Yes, they have one of the top 3 winning streaks in college football. Yes, 20 straight. But it's something about Washington, especially a year ago, in Big Ten play and just in totality, they did not play any inspired football on the road. They have a very, very winnable road schedule this season outside of Michigan. If they can play better on the road, we might see a very, very entertaining season for the Huskies.
If you're not going to Autzen and you're not going to the Shoe and you're not going to Happy Valley, you've gotten about as good a draw as you're going to get on the road in the Big Ten.
No question.
Just to hammer home your point, B-Mac, they were 6-0 at home when it comes to winning games, but on the road they were 0-7. That is both the road and neutral sites there. And to take it a step further, that Michigan game you were referring to, it was the only game that they won against an AP-ranked opponent this year. They were 1-3 against the AP. So some big questions to ask of Washington, both on the road and just in general here. Let's wrap up our conversation with Wisconsin, fellas. Another team that had a losing season in the Big 12. Their 22 straight seasons with a winning streak was snapped. They missed a bowl game as well. Josh, when I think about Wisconsin, though, it takes me a second to remember that Luke Fickell took over this program, that there's a lot of talent on this roster. Kind of just feels like they're lacking some identity going into 2025.
You and me both. I mean, it's really, really mind-boggling to think that my biggest question for a Luke Fickell Wisconsin team those are two entities that seem tailor-made for each other. My biggest question would be in year 3 and beyond, what's your identity? I mean, that's the last question that I thought. I never thought I'd ask it about him at Cincinnati or Wisconsin, wherever he is. And then especially if that guy, knowing his DNA, goes to a place like Wisconsin knowing their DNA. But you remember when he took the job, you know, I remember sitting down with him at that first Big Ten media days, and they'd hired Phil Longo on the offensive coordinator side, and he said, we just got to shake things up. We got to be more progressive. We got to be more innovative. It's going to look radically different offensively. And he was right that it looked different, but, man, it was different for the worse. And so now, I mean, Jeff Grimes comes in. All right, so says all the right things. He's got an MO. He's got a track record. It's no mystery what they're going to try and get back to doing. But we are seeing several places across the country, from Wisconsin to Oklahoma to USC to LSU. They're big names that got hired at programs and made very, very just fundamentally flawed coordinator hires out of the gate. So then you find yourself having to course correct 2 or 3 years in, and then you find yourself saying, even if I just made the right move, will my people give me the patience that they would have given me if I made this hire at the outset? It's a mixed bag of yes, no there.
And you talk about mixed bag. I don't know exactly how you would grade this Luke Fickell, Wisconsin situation today, because it seems like the margin hasn't really been reached, especially a year ago. You talk about having a losing season. They don't do that. Regardless of not having championship aspirations there at Wisconsin, they have aspirations of winning the games they're supposed to win and being competitive, and we didn't see that a year ago. So the bigger question for me with Wisconsin, what would this – we expected to see what we think we will see from Jeff Grimes in this offense, but will he be successful in doing so, right? Because if you look at what he did while he was at Kansas, 2 things we knew about Jeff Grimes when he was at Kansas. They were going to run the football well, and they were going to be outstanding in third down opportunities. Because of the success in running the football, they got into manageable third down moments, and they capitalized on those said moments. If you can do those 2 things in football, you're going to be in scoring. You're going to have scoring opportunities, and you're going to be in moments to win ball games. So can he instill that same mindset, that foundation there to run the football, get back to being the old Wisconsin? Once upon a time, Wisconsin was known for high-level offensive linemen, big bruisers, great running back play, the Melvin Gordons of the world, the Jonathan Taylors of the world. That's what we grew up watching. Ron Dane. Quality running backs that can run the football behind physical offensive linemen. Can Jeff Grimes instill that mindset there in Wisconsin to be able to get in scoring range to hopefully have a better outcome in 2025 than what they did not have in 2024?
Yeah, B-Mac, you mentioned it. Don't want to have back-to-back losing seasons. If they do, though, it'd be the first time since the early 90s. They opened the season against Miami, Ohio. And then they face Alabama in September. So we'll do a temperature check maybe after that Alabama game and see how we're feeling about Wisconsin. Fellas, appreciate the time. One more day of Big Ten Media Days for you both. Enjoy all of the action and the sights and sounds there. As the countdown to college football is officially on here at CBS, the action returning to our platforms every Saturday at 3:30 Eastern for Big Time on CBS Sports. We'll also have your pregame on CBS Sports HQ beginning at 3 o'clock. That streaming on Paramount+.